My name is Jonathan. My lifelong friend Simon recently disappeared 2 nights ago. As a young child, Arthur, the bully, had always been a thorn in our sides. His imposing figure and demanding nature made life unbearable for us. Each day, Simon, Eddie, and I walked home from school. We dreaded the point where our path took us to the creek by the highway. That was where we usually encountered Arthur and his small wannabe gang, and there was no getting away from them fast enough if they decided to pick on you that day. It was Friday after school. Bored and looking for adventure, the 3 of us decided to explore the infamous tunnel at the old creek under the highway. Everyone called it the cave. It was just a large storm drain, or possibly a service entrance of some kind. So, we headed downhill into the creek. 3 dorky 11-year-olds, talking and laughing, not a care in the world. But at the last moment, we saw Arthur lurking there alone. That was odd, him alone, dirty, and talking to himself. His presence filled dread into our hearts as we tried to slip past him back up the hill unnoticed. However, he had other plans. Giving up quickly, we told him our plan to explore the tunnel. With a menacing grin and a few words, he snatched my friend Simon and forced him into the dark tunnel first. Now, 4 of us entered the tunnel. It smelled like urine and feces, with flies and trash scattered around. The water was puddling, but not running. After some time, our sunlight became backlight that faded as the darkness enveloped us. And our only source of light was the feeble glow of a few broken industrial ceiling lights. Graffiti marked the walls, and the tunnel split off into other tunnels or locked doors left and right, like a never-ending labyrinth. Arthur was quiet for the first time ever. Now that I think about it more, Arthur was not himself that day. He was usually talking some kind of nonsense about how he was the only tough one, or some joke about someone's mom. This time, I was leading the pack as he lagged far behind, with a scared look on his face. As we ventured deeper into the tunnel, it became muddy and the water was running. Our hearts pounded like a drumbeat, along with the dripping water in the eerie silence. Along the way, we reached a split. Choosing a random path, we followed it. As the tunnel turned the corner, the light of day left us completely. Eventually, curve after curve, we reached a junction where 4 tunnels converged, and our terror reached its peak when we stumbled upon it. In the center of the tunnel network stood a massive wooden crate. The crate was tall and old. As we gathered around it, daring each other to touch it or open it, Arthur pushed Simon towards it, and just then we noticed it moving. Then, with a long creak and crackle, the lid started to open, and something grotesque quickly climbed out, with long, gnarled limbs protruding from its sides, and it had a human-like face contorted into a macabre grimace. Its elongated torso completely filled the tunnel, blocking our path and sending shivers down our spines. It just watched us, breathing in our scent. Paralyzed by fear, we didn't dare approach any closer. But Arthur stepped up closer. Suddenly we all turned and ran in the opposite direction, desperate to escape the terrifying scene we had stumbled upon. Simon was the first to run, but Eddie was frozen, so I had to grab him by the shirt and basically drag him part way. I glanced back only briefly, but what I saw haunted me for years. A shadowy figure that resembled Arthur, standing by the crate, looking up, seemingly entranced by the monstrous entity. Screaming and running in the dark, I could hear it chasing us, its body making a scraping sound against the walls of the tunnel. We finally emerged from the tunnel, then ran to the street above, gasping for breath, our hearts still racing. But there was no sign of Arthur. He had vanished without a trace. We decided to keep our encounter a secret, too afraid to tell anyone what we had seen that day. No one would believe kids anyway. A full week had passed, and missing child signs for Arthur and his friends were hanging on every telephone pole, stop sign, and every grocery store window. The newspapers had their faces all over them, but no one else was missing. The town grew scared and quiet. Eddie started ignoring us, too afraid to hang out. He never really left home again. His parents now drove him to and from school every day. Everything changed. The town changed. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of Simon and me, so we returned to the tunnel under the freeway. To our shock, the cave entrance had been sealed with a heavy-duty steel gate with a small gap underneath, just enough to allow the water to flow. It was as though someone had decided to lock away the horrors that lurked in that dark abyss forever. As we walked away, I heard a weird thud. Now, sitting by the entrance, was Arthur's backpack, just sitting outside of the tunnel. It was luring us with our own curiosity to our death. We ran again, all the way home in tears. Later, Simon and I realized that Arthur led us to the monster. We never figured out what that thing was that climbed out. Also, was it really Arthur that day? Did he do this to his gang too, or did we leave him behind? Those questions have always bothered me every night. Because Arthur and his gang disappeared, my parents and Simon's parents moved us 3 towns over. Rumors spread, but none of them were scarier than the truth. A few years later in high school, in the papers and all over the news, I found out Eddie had also disappeared. On TV, his parents said a large, elongated, grey, human-like monster took him.